Hey guys, Dr. Josh Axe here along with Jordan Rubin. We're really excited today to talk about collagen, bone broth, and even things like minerals, some other cofactors as well. And you guys know that we are big fans of bone broth specifically. And there's some unique things in bone broth that actually aren't found in just sort of your typical collagen supplements that are out there today as well. But we want to go through the different types of collagen, how that can benefit your body, and also how to be getting this into your diet really every single day as our ancestors did.
Absolutely. Bone broth is something that is absolutely wonderful for your health, but difficult to make. It's difficult to buy the ingredients. It's time consuming and it's kind of yucky. I don't mind cooking or creating a one-pot meal, but
by the way, I love that you say the word yucky. It's just
3-4 days though of bone broth with the garlic and the veggies that are kind of the sliminess. It just is a little off-putting. And so what happens is people will get on a bone broth kick, they'll make it a few times, then they'll quit. They'll try to buy some frozen or some bone broth in a canister, or even go to a restaurant now that serves bone broth, and they just don't get these amazing nutrients and cofactors in their system often enough. And for me, I'm someone with a big family who wants everyone to consume broth every single day. And so for years, I've tried to find ways to get bone broth into people's diets. But before we talk to people about ways to get bone broth into their diet, we should probably talk about what bone broth is.
Yeah, so bone broth is, first it's been consumed for thousands of years, and bone broth is where you take typically the bones, ligaments, and tendons of an animal, whether it's fish or beef or chicken, and you take those animal parts and you submerge them in water. Sometimes you put in a little bit of vinegar, like apple cider vinegar can help pull a few other things out, but you let it simmer for 24 hours, sometimes 48 hours, and what happens is all of those nutrients, which include certain minerals like potassium and magnesium and calcium, along with different types of collagen, type 1 and 3 collagen, sometimes type 2 collagen, and then other things, glucosamine, chondroitin, hyaluronic acid. These things are pulled out into into the water, and then you have broth. And so essentially broth is made through simmering bones, ligaments, and tendons for a period of 24 hours, and you get this broth that is really highly absorbent. One of the things that I know I've heard you talk about, Jordan, that's so amazing about broth is that it is serum soluble. Talk about why that's so different than other forms of proteins or amino acids too. What makes it unique?
Well, first of all, I want to paint the picture here that a bone broth is essentially like making a tea or an herbal infusion, except you're not using plant materials, you're using animal bones, right? I mean, that is exactly what it is. It is an extract of the goodness from the bones. And when you extract the goodness from the bones, you're getting the compounds that help support your bones, your joints, your ligaments, your tendons, etc. It has been consumed for thousands of years. And here's what I tell people all the time. Our ancestors, your ancestors, would never have consumed meat without consuming broth. And what is broth? It's really proteins and minerals, but not just any protein. As you mentioned, it's soluble proteins. So if you look at broth and you leave it out in a glass or a bowl, it is going to stay in solution. You're not going to have things sink to the bottom or float to the top. What else is soluble? Fruit and vegetable juices, herbal teas and herbal infusions. Those are soluble. What it means is it dissolves in water and your body has to do very little to get the goodness out. Why is broth so soothing? Why is it recommended at hospitals when people are convalescing? Why is it one of the easiest foods to digest? Because it's soluble. Guess what's not soluble? Milk protein, egg protein, rice protein, soy protein, hemp protein. Those are all insoluble. They take work. Bone broth is soothing for the gut because it's easy to digest and assimilate. And that's why people from the youngest child to the oldest adult can do great with broth. It is easy on the system, but it provides so much goodness.
Yeah, so broth is one of those superfoods that's been consumed for, like we've talked about, for thousands of years by our ancestors. And if you're not getting bone broth every single day, you're really missing out on what we believe is probably the #1 superfood that we are missing in our diets today. Here's the truth. Think about this. 70% of your skin, your hair, your nails, your bones, your dish, your gut lining, at least 75% of those or more are made up of collagen. 30% of the proteins in your body are collagen proteins. A lot of people today, Jordan, you and I both know this, they're getting zero collagen in their diet every single day. I know for myself and Chelsea, we get probably 2 to 3 servings of collagen every single day via bone broth or bone broth protein. And a similar thing, our dogs, our dogs Oakley and Flash, we give them the a turmeric flavored bone broth protein, which they absolutely love. I don't know, your entire family loves it, your kids love it. I know that my one of the first times I had it was hanging with you guys. Isabella, your daughter loves it, and I was going to joke around with you earlier when you were saying the word how yucky making broth is, but she thinks it's very yummy to have these flavored bone broth proteins that kids love too,
Right, well, I have to tell you this. I was on vacation with my family, and my daughter, Isabella, who's 5, said to her brother, Joshua, hey, Joshua, I like you, but I like Josh Axe better. Oh, no. So hanging out with you is fun, but I'd rather hang out with Josh Axe.
I'm very honored.
Yes, you should be. So bone broth is good for all ages. It's soothing, and it gives you the goodness of the particular animal that it's coming from. And I really like a plethora of broths, but beef bone broth has some unique benefits in that it is very high in type 1 and type 3 collagen. So if you are out buying a collagen supplement, and we love collagen supplements, we formulate them, we think they're amazing, they're typically type 1 and 3. What I like about beef bone broth is that it is a food, a beverage, and it's basically a real food cooked the way your grandmother would, that is gently dehydrated. And the beef or the cattle that it comes from are sort of pristine cattle, raised specially, not given hormones, antibiotics, etc. That's really important because the source matters. And what I love about beef bone broth is it's very mild. And so when somebody is a little bit concerned about consuming broth because they just haven't, this is mild, it mixes well, it's delicious, and it's great in a plethora of ways.
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier. Today the USDA, they have their sort of food charts and food groups that you should be getting, and I believe it's like 5 to 9 servings of fruits and vegetables you should be getting a day, and then 1 to 3 servings of meat or grains and all those things. But at some point we need to have a broth category.
Absolutely.
How many servings of broth you getting a day? And this sort of thing that is, we have in our diet that our ancestors did. A lot of people are missing essentially this food group, and they're not getting collagen in their diet. So really, our recommendation is make sure you're getting collagen, whether you're making bone broth at home, you're buying it frozen, or you're having a flavored form of it, you're adding it into smoothies or almond milk or coconut milk. Just make sure you're getting 1 to 3 servings a day. And I think this is important really for an entire family. And there's some awesome flavors as well. I know that I'm traveling this weekend to Texas, and I've got my my bone broth packets that I take everywhere I go, or I just bring, I get a few scoops of, one of the great flavors, and, bring it wherever I go. But that's the thing, is you just want to make sure you're getting 1 to 3 servings a day.
Absolutely, and I agree. No one, and I'm talking about whether your ancestry comes from North America, from Asia, from Africa, from Europe, there is no one 2, 3 generations back that would not find their ancestors consuming bone broth multiple times a week, if not every day. In fact, they would never eat meat without consuming broth. It would have been considered wasteful. In fact, my grandmother, who grew up in Poland, they had much more broth than they did meat because they couldn't afford a lot. They were peasants, if you will, and they made their huge pot of broth. She was the youngest of 8 children, and so she got sort of the dregs, but it ended up being the best of the best because the broth pulls all these wonderful nutrients out, very digestible. The smallest child to the oldest adult can benefit from broth. And I've said this, if bone broth was in every assisted living home and every preschool, I believe we'd be a stronger, healthier society as a result. We are literally the first brothless generation in history, and we are trying to bring the broth back, baby.
Yeah, so remember this, broth, especially beef bone broth, as we're talking about type 1 and 3 collagen, it's critical for, we've talked about, it's part of what makes up your skin, your hair, your nails, your bones, your discs. To a degree, even other areas of your body are made up of collagen, your ligaments, your tendons, your gut lining. So you got to get collagen in your diet every day ideally, and beef bone broth or just bone broth in general in powder form is a great way to get it. So hey, hope you guys enjoyed this video with myself and Jordan Rubin.